I stood in his office watching him on his knees. 36 hours ago, this man had made me feel smaller than dust. Now, tears carved deep rivers down his weathered cheeks as he actually begged, for my signature. The mahogany desk between us held a single document, its crisp white pages catching the morning light like a blade. "Please," he whispered, his voice cracking like thin ice. "I'll do anything." I set the champagne down slowly, deliberately, letting the crystal chime softly against the wood. The sound lingered in the silence. My fingers traced the edge of the contract he so desperately needed signed, the one that would either save his empire or watch it crumble to ash. To understand why I felt no mercy in that moment, you need to know what happened at that dinner. You need to know what it's like to have your dignity stripped away in front of everyone who matters, left exposed and humiliated while they laugh over their imported wine. You need to hear about the night Richard Beckham decided to destroy me. Before we continue, write in the comments which country you're watching this video from. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in. And if this is your first time on this channel, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge stories to life. Enjoy listening. The invitation had arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who waited while I signed for it. The envelope alone probably cost more than my monthly subway pass, cream-colored paper so thick it felt like fabric, my name written in gold calligraphy that shimmered when I tilted it. The Beckham Foundation cordially invites you. I remember standing in my apartment doorway, still in my pajamas, reading those words 3 times before they sank in. The Beckham Foundation, the organization that controlled half the city's development projects, whose charity galas made headlines, whose CEO's face graced the cover of Forbes twice a year. My phone buzzed. "Angela, did you get it?" Her voice crackled with excitement through the speaker. "How did you? I recommended you. Can you believe it? They actually listened to me. You're going to the autumn benefit dinner." My stomach dropped like an elevator with its cables cut. Angela meant well. She always did. As a junior partner at Whitmore & Associates, she'd been trying to help me network ever since I launched my consulting firm 2 years ago. But the Beckham dinner wasn't just another networking event. It was a gathering of the city's elite, the people who owned the buildings I walked past, who made decisions that shaped millions of lives. "Angela, I don't belong there." "Stop that." Her tone sharpened. "You absolutely belong there. Your environmental impact algorithms are revolutionary. You just need the right people to see them." I sank onto my couch, the invitation heavy in my hands. Outside the window, the city stretched endlessly, glass towers reflecting the morning sun like 1,000 mirrors. Somewhere in one of those towers, Richard Beckham was probably reviewing his guest list, seeing my name, a nobody, a statistical anomaly among the surnames that built this city. "It's in 3 days," I said weakly. "Perfect. We'll go shopping tomorrow. You need something spectacular." After she hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment for a long time. The invitation lay on the coffee table, elegant and somehow menacing. I couldn't shake the feeling that accepting it would change everything. I had no idea how right I was. The dress Angela picked out cost more than I'd spent on clothes in the last 5 years combined. Black silk that poured over my body like water, catching light in subtle ways that made me look different, expensive, like I belonged. "You look like money," Angela had said, stepping back to admire her work. Old money, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. But standing outside the Beckham Hotel that Friday evening, I felt like a fraud. The building soared into the night sky, its Art Deco architecture preserved from the 1920s, every window glowing gold. Bentleys and Rolls-Royces curved around the circular drive, releasing people who moved with the effortless confidence of generational wealth. My Uber pulled up between a Lamborghini and a vintage Aston Martin. The driver glanced back at me, eyebrows raised. "You sure this is the right address?" I wanted to tell him no, to give him my apartment address instead, crawl under my covers, and pretend this night wasn't happening. But instead, I handed him a tip and stepped out into air that smelled like expensive perfume and possibility. The doorman didn't even check my invitation. Maybe it was the dress, or the way Angela had taught me to walk. Spine straight, chin up, eyes forward. He simply nodded and opened the door. The lobby hit me like a physical force. Crystal chandeliers scattered prisms of light across marble floors so polished I could see my reflection. A string quartet played in the corner, their melody weaving through conversations in at least 4 languages I could recognize. Everyone moved with intent, flowing toward the grand ballroom, and I let myself drift with them. That's when I saw him for the first time. Richard Beckham stood near the ballroom entrance, and even if I hadn't recognized him from magazine covers, I would have known instantly that he was the center of this universe. People orbited around him, waiting for their turn to approach. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-40s perhaps, with silver threading through dark hair and a face that looked like it belonged on currency. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Gray, like gathering storms, eyes that took in everything and missed nothing. Our gazes locked across the lobby. The moment stretched, taut and fragile like pulled taffy. His eyes traveled from my face to my shoes and back again, assessing, calculating. A faint crease formed between his brows, as if I were a puzzle piece that didn't quite belong. Then someone touched his arm, drawing his attention away. The moment broke. I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The ballroom was a cathedral of extravagance. Tables draped in cream silk filled the space, each crowned with a miniature forest of white orchids that probably cost more than my rent. The ceiling shimmered with a painted night sky, tiny LED stars glittering between exposed beams. A jazz band played on a raised platform, their notes smooth and rich as aged whiskey. I found my place card at a table near the center, neither prime real estate nor forgettable. Angela sat 3 tables away, already engrossed in conversation with a man I recognized from the financial news. He caught my eye and winked. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up to see a woman in her 60s, her pearl necklace gleaming softly under the light, pearls that probably had their own insurance policy. Her smile was warm but deliberate, the kind that made you wonder what her interest was. "Please," I said, gesturing to the chair beside me. She seated herself with the effortless grace of someone long accustomed to admiration. Margaret Rothschild. "I don't believe we've met." Evelyn Grant. Her eyebrows arched slightly. Grant. Not the environmental systems analyst?" The surprise must have shown on my face because she laughed, a sound like champagne bubbles. "Oh, my dear. Your paper on sustainable urban development was all my nephew could talk about last month. He's in city planning. Quite brilliant, really, using predictive modeling to optimize green space allocation." Heat rose to my cheeks. "Thank you. I didn't realize anyone had actually read it. The right people read everything, dear." She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The trick is making sure you become one of the right people." Before I could respond, the lights dimmed. Richard Beckham had taken the stage. The room hushed instantly, the air tightening like a held breath. He stood at the podium with the easy confidence of a man who had never doubted his place in any room. When he spoke, his voice carried effortlessly to every corner. "Welcome, friends, to our annual autumn benefit." Friends. The word rolled off his tongue like a promise, or a warning, depending on where you stood in his estimation. He spoke of the foundation's accomplishments, the millions raised for education and healthcare, painting scenes of lives changed and futures renewed. But I watched his eyes. They swept across the crowd like searchlights, cataloging faces, measuring value. When they found me, they paused just for a heartbeat, long enough for my pulse to skip. Then he moved on, but something in his expression had shifted, tightened. Margaret noticed, too. "Well," she murmured. "That's interesting. What is?" I whispered. "Richard never looks at anyone twice unless they're worth his time. Or a problem." She studied me with renewed curiosity. "I wonder which one you are." The applause came like rain on a tin roof when his speech ended. Servers appeared, setting down the first course. Something sculptural, all foam and microgreens, more art than food. I was reaching for my water glass when a shadow fell across the table. Ladies. Richard Beckham stood beside my chair, close enough for me to catch the scent of his cologne, dark, expensive and complex like smoke and cedar. Up close, I could see the fine lines near his eyes and a faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. "Richard," Margaret greeted evenly, her tone careful. "How lovely to see you." He nodded politely, but his gaze was fixed on me. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure." Richard Beckham. His hand extended toward me, manicured, confident, steady. I took it, trying to ignore how my palm had gone damp. "Evelyn Grant." Grant. He repeated my name slowly, as if tasting it. "And what brings you to our little gathering, Miss Grant?" The possessive pronoun didn't escape me. Our gathering. As if I were trespassing. "I was invited," I said evenly. "By whom?" Margaret shifted beside me, a subtle warning, but the casual arrogance in his tone made my spine lock straight. "Does it matter?" His eyebrows lifted slightly. Around us I felt attention turn, heads angling our way, the way sharks sense blood in the water. "Everything matters, Miss Grant." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "For example, it matters that I know everyone in this room, their families, their businesses, their contributions to our city." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle like a net. "Everyone. Except you? Then perhaps your knowledge isn't as complete as you thought." Someone at the next table gasped softly. Richard's smile widened, but it was the smile of a predator who's found something to toy with before the kill. "Perhaps not," he said quietly. "Tell me then, what is it you do, Miss Grant? How do you contribute?" The word contribute dripped with implication. Conversations around us had stopped entirely. We were the evening's new entertainment, theater for the elite. "I run a consulting firm," I said. "Environmental systems analysis." He drew out the word consulting like it left a bad taste. "How modern. And where did you study?" "State University." "State." He let the single word roll in his mouth, turning it into a weapon. "How refreshingly. Common." My face burned, but I kept my voice steady. "I wasn't aware this was an academic review." "Everything is a review, Miss Grant," he said smoothly. "Every room you enter, every conversation you have. Especially rooms like this." He gestured subtly to the opulence surrounding us. "You see, there are two kinds of people here tonight. Those who build legacies, and those who—" He paused, eyes gleaming. "Consult for them." A few polite chuckles rippled through the audience. Margaret's hand found my wrist beneath the table, a gentle pressure, a silent plea to stop, to yield, to survive. But I was 28 years old. I'd worked 18-hour days for 2 years to build something from nothing. And this man, wrapped in a $10,000 suit, wanted to reduce me to a footnote because I hadn't been born into the right zip code. "You're right," I said, rising slowly to my feet. Now we were eye to eye, though he still had 3 inches on me, even in heels. "There are two kinds of people here," I said, my voice calm but clear. "Those who earned their place, and those who inherited it." The silence that followed was total. Even the servers froze mid-step. Richard's expression hardened, his face a perfect sculpture of cold marble. When he spoke again, his tone was soft enough for only a handful to hear, which somehow made it far more dangerous. "Careful, Miss Grant," he murmured. "You're speaking of things you don't understand. Of people whose foundations run deeper than your entire existence." He leaned closer, his breath brushing my ear. "You think your little algorithms and models matter? You think typing on a computer makes you valuable? You're playing with toys while the adults reshape the world." Then he straightened, his voice rising again for the crowd to hear. "But please enlighten us. Share your vast wisdom earned from your state education. Tell us how someone who's never built anything, never risked anything, never created a single job or lasting institution, knows better than 3 generations of civic leadership." My throat was dry as sand. Words formed but refused to leave. Around us, faces watched with hungry fascination, like Romans awaiting blood in the Colosseum. I thought not. His smile was triumphant now. You see, this is the problem with opening doors too wide. People wander in who don't understand the language being spoken, who mistake invitation for belonging. He turned slightly, addressing the wider crowd, voice smooth as silk. Education isn't just about degrees, is it? It's about refinement, understanding, things that can't be learned from textbooks or... He glanced back at me. Community college spreadsheets. The laughter started then. Not everyone joined in. Margaret remained silent beside me. Her fingers still on my wrist, but enough did to make my chest ache. To make my eyes sting with tears I refused to let fall. You know what your problem is, Miss Grant? Richard continued, drunk on his own cruelty. You're uneducated, he paused. Oh, not in the traditional sense. I'm sure you can recite formulas and theories with the best of them. But uneducated in the ways that matter, in understanding your place, in recognizing the difference between those who belong, and those who are merely... He let the word hang, savoring it. She's tolerated. Something inside me cracked, sharp and cold as breaking ice. Excuse me, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I turned and walked away, forcing myself not to run, refusing to give him that satisfaction. The crowd parted before me, a sea of faces, some pitying, some amused, all witnessing my humiliation. The ballroom doors felt miles away, but I kept moving, my heels striking the marble in a rhythm that sounded like, get out, get out, get out. Behind me, Richard's voice rose again, smooth, casual, dismissive. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the Foundation's expansion into overseas markets. As if destroying someone was merely a brief interruption in his evening. I made it to the bathroom before the tears came. The ladies' lounge was as excessive as everything else. Pink marble counters, gold fixtures, fresh roses in crystal vases. I locked myself in the farthest stall and finally let my body shake with the sobs I'd been holding back. Uneducated. The word echoed in my skull, ricocheting through every insecurity I'd ever carried. Every time I'd felt out of place at industry events. Every moment someone's eyes had glazed over upon hearing where I went to school. Every small dismissal I told myself didn't matter. But hearing it out loud, with such casual cruelty in front of everyone, the door opened. Heels clicked across marble. Evelyn Angela's voice. I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle a sob. Evelyn, I know you're in here. Someone saw you come in. Please go away. My voice came out thick and broken. Not a chance. I heard her step closer. Saw her silver heels stop outside the stall. Open the door. Honey, I can't face anyone. You don't have to face anyone, just me. Slowly, I reached out and turned the lock. Angela immediately pulled me into a fierce hug, her arms wrapping around me. That bastard, she whispered into my hair. That absolute bastard. He was right, though. The words came out between hiccuping breaths. I don't belong here. I don't understand their world. Stop. She pulled back, gripping my shoulders firmly. Stop right now. You know what Richard Beckham is? A man who inherited everything and built nothing. His grandfather made that fortune. His father grew it. Richard just sits on it like a dragon on gold, breathing fire at anyone who reminds him he's never earned a thing. But everyone laughed. Not everyone. And the ones who did, they're cowards. They laugh at whoever Richard points at because they're terrified of being next. She pulled tissues from her clutch, dabbing gently at my face to salvage what remained of my makeup. You know what the real joke is? Angela's voice hardened. Half the people in that room would kill for your mind. Do you know how many companies tried to poach you after my recommendation? But no, Richard Beckham feels threatened by someone who actually works for a living, so he has to tear you down to feel powerful. The door opened again. Margaret Rothschild stepped in, her expression unreadable. Ladies. Angela moved slightly, positioning herself between Margaret and me. It's all right, Margaret said softly. I come in peace, and with information. She set her clutch on the counter, turning to face us fully. Richard Beckham is a small man with a large inheritance. But what he doesn't know, what he's too arrogant to have researched, is that you, my dear, are about to become very important to him. I laughed bitterly. I doubt that. Do you know what Monday is? The 15th? The deadline for the Riverside Development Project, the largest urban renewal initiative in the city's history. $60 billion in investment. She paused, watching my reaction. A project that requires environmental impact approval from the city's newly appointed consulting firm. My blood ran cold. No. Oh, yes. As of yesterday, your firm was selected as the primary environmental assessment consultant. The mayor's office was impressed by your innovative modeling techniques. Richard's company needs your signature on their impact statement by Monday, or they lose their spot as the lead developer. Angela grabbed my arm. Are you serious? Quite serious. The announcement won't be public until Monday morning, but I have friends in the mayor's office. Margaret smiled, sharp and knowing. Richard just publicly humiliated the one person who holds his $60 billion baby in her hands. I stared at her, unable to process it. But how did he not know? Because Richard Beckham doesn't notice the little people until they become big problems. He assumes his team handles the details. He shows up for photo ops and signatures. She picked up her clutch. His arrogance just cost him everything. What do I do? I whispered. Margaret studied me for a long, thoughtful moment. That depends, Margaret said evenly. What do you want? You could sign his papers, be the bigger person, prove that you're professional despite his cruelty. Her smile sharpened. Or you could teach him that words have consequences, that treating people as less than human because of where they came from has a price. She moved toward the door, then paused, her voice soft but cutting. Whatever you decide, my dear, remember this. Richard Beckham just gave you a gift. He showed you exactly who he is. The question now is, who are you? The door closed behind her with a quiet whisper. Angela and I stood in silence for a long moment before she spoke, her voice hard as diamonds. Burn him to the ground. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Makeup smeared, eyes red, a dress that cost too much on a body deemed unworthy. But behind the devastation, something else stirred. Something cold, patient, and inevitable as winter. I need to go home, I said quietly. I need to think. I'll come with you. No. I straightened, wiping away the last of the tears. I need to be alone. But Angela, don't let them see you upset. Go back in there, smile, act like nothing happened. Why? Because Monday morning everything changes. And I want them to remember that we didn't run. We didn't break. I met her eyes in the mirror. We just got quiet. She squeezed my hand. What are you going to do? I thought about Richard's words, about the laughter, about 3 years of 18-hour days building something from nothing, while men like him sat in inherited offices deciding who belonged. I'm going to show him what an uneducated person can do, with a pen. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk surrounded by every document related to the Riverside Development Project, the city's request for environmental assessment, proposals from 5 major developers, and there, emblazoned with the Beckham Industries logo, a 60-page projection of ecological impact. It was a beautiful lie. They had hidden the real damage in footnotes and appendices, buried toxic soil reports under optimistic estimates, reduced wildlife displacement figures to 1/10 of the actual numbers. It was the kind of report that looked flawless to anyone who didn't know what to look for, but I did. This was my world, my language. By 3 a.m., I had identified 47 violations of environmental standards. By 5 a.m., I found the smoking gun. They had knowingly based their projections on soil samples from a completely different site, 5 miles away, with far lower contamination levels. My phone rang at 6 a.m., an unknown number. Miss Grant? The voice was male, nervous. This is Timothy Walsh from the mayor's office. I'm calling to officially inform you that your firm has been selected. I'm aware. A pause. You are? News travels. When do you need the assessment? Monday, 9 a.m. The announcement will be made at 10, and we need everything filed before then. Will that be a problem? I looked around, at the chaos of papers covering every surface, at my laptop with 17 tabs open, at my reflection in the dark window, hollow-eyed but burning with something that felt like purpose. Not at all. Excellent. The developers will be contacting you over the weekend to provide any additional information you need. I'm sure they will. After hanging up, I made coffee and kept working. The sun rose over the city, painting the glass towers gold and pink. Somewhere, in one of those towers, Richard Beckham was probably sipping his own coffee, preparing for another day of inherited importance. He had no idea what was coming. The first call came at 9 a.m., sharp. Not Richard. Of course, he wouldn't lower himself to call directly. Instead, it was someone named Bradley, a project manager with a voice like imported honey. Miss Grant, congratulations on your selection. We at Beckham Industries are thrilled to be working with you. Are you? Absolutely. Mr. Beckham specifically asked me to reach out and ensure you have everything you need for your assessment. I almost laughed. How thoughtful of Mr. Beckham. Could we schedule a meeting? Perhaps lunch today? We'd love to walk you through our environmental initiatives. That won't be necessary. Send me your complete environmental workup, all of it, including soil samples, wildlife surveys, and chemical runoff projections. Of course. Though I should mention our team has already completed a comprehensive review. I'm sure they have. The files, please. By noon. Of course. Noon. I hung up and went back to work. The files arrived at 11:47. They had tried to clean them up, but in their rush, they only made things worse. New documents contradicted old ones. Recently edited timestamps revealed their panic. They had just given me everything I needed to destroy them. Angela came by that afternoon with Thai food and a bottle of wine. You look terrible, she said, setting the bags down on my kitchen counter. Thanks. How's it going? I gestured at the chaos spread across the room. I have enough to end them. So you're going to do it? You're going to reject their proposal. I pulled a piece of pad thai from the container, considering. Did you know Beckham Industries secured the Riverside contract before it was even announced? They've been preparing for 2 years. They've already started buying up surrounding properties, pushing tenants out. That's illegal. Not if you're careful. Not if you have good lawyers. I took a sip of wine. They've invested everything in this. If they lose it, they're looking at bankruptcy. Angela studied me carefully. You could ask for anything right now. Money, a position at the company. Hell, you could probably get Richard to publicly apologize. I could, but you won't. I thought about that ballroom, the way the laughter had cut through me, the way the word uneducated had fallen from his lips like poison. About every person who had ever been made to feel small by someone who inherited their throne. No, I said quietly. I won't. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling. I submitted my preliminary report to the mayor's office at 8:09 p.m., 12 hours before the deadline. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I turned off my phone and took a bath. Lying in the hot water, I thought about what Monday would bring. Richard would know by now that I had his future in my hands. He'd have spent the weekend trying to find a way around me, over me, through me. But the beautiful thing about environmental law was its rigidity. My signature was required, and only mine. I wondered if he remembered me yet. If someone had shown him my picture and he'd recognized the woman he'd humiliated at his own gala. If he'd felt the first touch of fear, cold and creeping, down the back of his neck. I hoped so. That night, I finally slept and dreamed of towers collapsing, of glass castles shattering into brilliant fragments that caught the light as they fell. Monday morning arrived with unusual clarity, the kind of crisp October day that made the city look like a movie set. I dressed carefully, my best suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, the one I'd bought with my first consulting check, professional, serious, educated. The mayor's office had requested my presence at 8:30 a.m. for a final review. I arrived at 8:15 to find chaos. The lobby buzzed with reporters, cameras, and people in expensive suits barking into phones. I recognized several faces from the Beckham Gala, their usual composure cracked by stress. Miss Grant. Timothy Walsh appeared at my elbow, slightly out of breath. "Thank God you're here. We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" He glanced around, then pulled me toward a private elevator. "Mr. Beckham is here. He arrived at 7 this morning demanding to speak with you." My pulse quickened, but my voice stayed steady. "And?" "We've been stalling, but he's insistent." The elevator rose smoothly, carrying us away from the chaos below. Timothy fidgeted with his tablet, clearly uneasy. "Miss Grant," he said cautiously, "I have to ask. Is there something we should know about? Your preliminary report was devastating." It was accurate. "Yes, but Beckham Industries has been the presumptive developer for months." "Everyone expected expectations and environmental law," I interrupted, "are two different things, Mr. Walsh." The elevator doors opened to a quieter floor. Wood paneling, muted voices, the scent of expensive polish. Timothy led me down a hallway to a conference room. "He's in there," he said softly. "You don't have to speak with him if you don't want to." I looked through the glass door. Richard Beckham sat at the far end of the table. Even from here, I could see what 3 sleepless nights had done to him. His suit was immaculate, but his face had aged. Dark circles bruised the skin beneath his eyes. His hands, resting on the table, trembled slightly. "Give me 5 minutes," I said. Timothy exhaled in relief. "The mayor will be here at 9 for the final review." I waited until he disappeared around the corner before opening the door. Richard's head snapped up. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. I watched recognition wash over his face, the widening of his eyes, the sharp intake of breath. He started to stand, then thought better of it. "Miss Grant." I moved to the opposite end of the table, remaining standing. "Mr. Beckham, you know why I'm here. I assume it's about your environmental impact assessment." He let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "My assessment?" "Yes," he rubbed his face with both hands. "Do you have any idea what you're about to do?" "I'm about to deliver an honest evaluation of your proposal's environmental impact. You're about to destroy 400 jobs. 20 years of planning, 60 billion in investment." "No," I said quietly. "You did that when you submitted fraudulent soil samples." His face went pale. "How did you—" "Those were preliminary. We were going to update. You built your entire projection on a lie, Mr. Beckham. Did you think no one would check? Or did you just assume whoever checked would be—" I paused, savoring the word. "Educated enough to look the other way." The silence between us stretched thin like a pulled wire. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, smaller, almost fragile. "What do you want?" "I'm sorry?" "Everyone wants something. Money. I can write a check right now. A position at the company. You could head our entire environmental division. A house, cars, stock options." He leaned forward, desperation cracking through his composure. "Name it." I thought about Friday night. About standing in that ballroom while he dissected me for amusement, and the laughter that followed me out the door. "I want you to understand something," I said. "You were right about one thing at your gala. There are 2 types of people, but not the ones you described. There are people who build others up and people who tear them down for sport. It was just words." I moved closer to the table. "Just words? Tell me, Mr. Beckham, when you called me uneducated in front of your guests, what was the goal? What did you gain from humiliating someone you'd never met?" He was silent for a long time. "I don't know. Yes, you do. You did it because you could. Because it made you feel powerful. Because in your world, people like me exist only as stepping stones for people like you. That's not— On Friday night, you told me I mistake invitation for belonging. You were right. I don't belong in your world, Mr. Beckham. Your world is built on cruelty masquerading as tradition, on inherited privilege dressed up as merit." I pulled out the chair across from him and sat. "But here's what you didn't understand. I don't need to belong in your world. I built my own." I placed my report on the table between us, 93 pages of meticulous documentation. Every violation, every falsified test, every corner cut in the name of profit. "This," I said, is what I'm submitting to the mayor in 20 minutes. He reached for it with trembling hands, flipping through the pages, horror blooming in his expression. This will finish us. Yes, the lawsuit alone will bankrupt us. The EPA will... He stopped, and for the first time, I saw something I never expected in Richard Beckham's eyes. Tears. Please, he whispered. I'm begging you. Like I begged you to stop? That was different. How? My voice wavered just slightly. How was it different? Because it was just words. Because humiliation doesn't cost $60 billion. I stood, smoothing my jacket. You know what's really uneducated, Mr. Beckham? Believing your actions don't have consequences. Thinking you can destroy people for entertainment and never pay the price. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and that job you inherited? That company your grandfather built? After today, it'll be worth about as much as my state education. Wait. He was on his feet now, moving toward me. Please, just wait. I'll apologize publicly. I'll take out a full-page ad in every paper. I'll donate to your firm, your school, whatever charity you want. I turned to face him one last time. Do you know the difference between us, Mr. Beckham? You apologized to save yourself. I would have apologized because it was right. The door opened before I could reach for it. The mayor stood there, flanked by Timothy and several officials. He looked between Richard and me, reading the situation in an instant. Mr. Beckham, I believe we asked you to wait downstairs. Richard's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. He looked at me once more, pleading, broken, undone. I felt nothing. Miss Grant, the mayor said smoothly, shall we begin our review? The news broke at 10:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was sitting in a coffee shop 3 blocks from City Hall when my phone lit up with notifications. The headline on the Times. Sight was almost poetic in its simplicity. Beckham Industries denied Riverside Development CE. Environmental violations cited in scathing report. The subheadline was even better. Stock plunges 47% in early trading. I sat there, sipping my lavender latte, watching the city continue its Monday morning routine. People rushed past the cafe window, checking phones, hurrying to meetings, living their lives. None of them knew that just 3 blocks away, an empire was collapsing. My phone rang. Angela, have you seen? Yes. And nothing. It's done. Evelyn, do you understand what you just did? Beckham Industries, Channel 7 just said they're holding emergency board meetings. There's talk of Chapter 11 by the end of the week. I watched the steam rise from my coffee, curling into the soft morning light. He should have been nicer at dinner. Angela laughed, sharp, delighted. Remind me never to piss you off. When she hung up, I sat quietly for another hour, watching the news updates roll in. The mayor's press conference at 11. Beckham's stock still falling. 3 major investors pulling out. Environmental groups demanding a criminal investigation. Then, at 12:15, a text from an unknown number. You've destroyed everything. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another. My children will lose their schools. My wife, the foundation, 400 families depend on this company. Still, I said nothing. At 12:34, one last message. I need to see you, please. I typed a single word in reply. No. The messages stopped after that. By evening, the story had gone national. Every business channel was running segments on the fall of Beckham Industries. Someone had leaked that Richard had personally overseen the environmental reports, making him legally liable for the fraud. The FBI was now involved. I turned off the news and made dinner, pasta with store-bought sauce. Nothing fancy. As I ate, I thought about what Margaret Rothschild had asked me that night. Who are you? I was someone who had been broken and refused to stay broken. Someone who had power placed in her hands and chose to use it. Someone who understood that mercy without justice is just another form of enablement. But I was also someone sitting alone in her apartment, eating pasta while a man's world burned. The knock came at 9 p.m. I looked through the peephole. Margaret Rothschild stood there, composed, elegant, exactly as she'd been at the gala despite the late hour. "My dear," she said when I opened the door. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. She entered, taking in my modest apartment without judgment. "I won't stay long," she said, settling gracefully onto my couch. "I just wanted to see how you were." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Her eyes were kind but knowing. "You've just destroyed a man who deserved destroying, but that doesn't make it easy. Power never is, especially when you're not used to wielding it." "I didn't want power. I just wanted to do my job. And he made that impossible the moment he turned you into a spectacle." She studied me for a moment. "Do you regret it?" I thought about Richard's tears, about the 400 families he'd mentioned, about the ripples of consequence spreading outward from what I'd done. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it was necessary, but not that I did it." "Good." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Because tomorrow you'll start getting offers. Every developer in the city now knows your name and what you're capable of. You can write your own ticket. I just want to build my firm. Then build it. But build it knowing that Richard Beckham made you famous. Your destruction of him is now your calling card. Use it wisely." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Evelyn, he's going to try one more time. Men like Richard always do. They can't help themselves. When he does, remember, you've already won. Don't let him make you cruel." After she left, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Richard Beckham was probably in emergency meetings, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. His lawyers would be strategizing. His board would be panicking. But I was here, in my small apartment with my store-bought dinner and my state education, and I had won. It didn't feel the way I thought it would. Tuesday arrived with rain that blurred the city into an impressionist painting, soft edges and reflected light. I woke to 17 voice messages and 43 emails from reporters seeking statements. I deleted them all at 10 a.m. A courier arrived with a letter, expensive stationery, familiar handwriting. "Miss Grant, I am hosting a press conference at 2 p.m. today at the Beckham Hotel. I would like you to be there. This is not a demand or manipulation. I simply believe you should hear what I have to say." RBI almost threw it away. Then I remembered Margaret's words. "He's going to try one more time." I decided to go. The Beckham Hotel lobby was packed with reporters when I arrived at 1:45. They'd set up a podium at the far end. Beckham Industries logos plastered everywhere despite the company's freefall. I found a spot near the back, half hidden behind a pillar. Richard appeared at exactly 2 o'clock and the room quieted. He looked like a different man from the one I'd faced 4 days earlier. The arrogance stripped away, leaving something raw and oddly human. He gripped the podium and began to speak. "4 days ago," he said, "I stood in the ballroom above and destroyed someone." The reporters leaned in, hunting for blood. "Her name is Evelyn Grant, and she had done nothing wrong except accept an invitation to our benefit. But when I saw her, young, talented, unlike the usual faces, I felt threatened. So I did what weak men do when they feel threatened. I attacked." My heart thudded. "This wasn't what I'd expected." "I called her uneducated," he continued. "Not because she lacks education. She has degrees, certifications, and a brilliant mind that builds solutions while I've only inherited them. I called her uneducated because in my world that word is a weapon. It means you don't belong. It means you know your place." He fixed the cameras with a steady look. "I was wrong. Not just morally wrong, factually wrong. Miss Grant is one of the most educated people I've ever met. She cut through our environmental report in hours, found what my team spent months hiding. She did her job with integrity while I tried to corrupt the system my grandfather built," a reporter shouted. But Richard raised a hand. "I'm not here to save my company. That ship has sailed, and deservedly so. I'm here because I owe Miss Grant something beyond an apology. I owe her the truth." He held up a folder. "This contains every environmental violation Beckham Industries has committed in the last decade, not just Riverside. Everything. I'm submitting this to the EPA, The FBI and the press after this conference. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My lawyers tell me this will bring criminal charges, he said. They're probably right. But Miss Grant reminded me of something. Actions have consequences. For 45 years, I lived without consequences, protected by money, name, privilege. That ends today. His eyes found mine for a moment. Miss Grant, if you're here, I want you to know you didn't destroy Beckham Industries. I did. 30 years of cutting corners, prioritizing profit over people, you just held up a mirror. He stepped back. That's all. No questions. Then he left through the side door, chaos erupting in his wake, reporters shouting, cameras swiveling. I slipped away during the confusion, mind reeling. Outside, the rain had stopped and the city smelled clean and new. I stood on the sidewalk trying to process what had just happened. Richard was there too, alone, no handlers, no lawyers, just a man in a wetsuit who looked exhausted. That was unexpected. You know, he said when I reached him. Margaret Rothschild visited me last night. She said something that stuck, that you'd already won. I remembered the words. She was right. But maybe performative isn't always useless. Sometimes public shame teaches. We stood in awkward silence. Two people who'd destroyed each other in different ways. I'm going to prison, he said quietly. Lawyers say 5 to 10 years minimum. I'm sorry, are you? I considered it. Yes, I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry you felt entitled enough that fraud seemed acceptable. I'm sorry for the people who will lose jobs because of your choices. But I'm not sorry for doing my job. He looked at me for a long moment. For what it's worth, you're going to be exceptional. Not because you destroyed me, but because you did it without becoming like me. You didn't enjoy it. How do I know? Because you're here. You listened to this instead of celebrating my downfall. He gave a sad smile. Stay that way, Miss Grant. Stay human. Then he walked away into the crowd. I never saw him again, though I followed for a while, watching him disappear. After the storm, the calls started that afternoon. Every major development firm in the city wanted to hire me. 7-figure salaries, corner offices, teams of analysts at my direction. The very people who had laughed at Richard's cruel joke were now desperate for my approval, my signature, my blessing on their projects. I turned them all down. Instead, I sat in my apartment as the sun dipped below the skyline, reading through the file Richard had released. The violations stretched back 23 years. Toxic waste dumped in low-income neighborhoods, wildlife preserves destroyed with falsified permits, an elementary school built on contaminated soil that had sickened dozens of children. The last page was handwritten, dated that morning. Miss Grant, by the time you read this, it will all be public. Every crime, every shortcut, every life damaged in pursuit of profit. I spent the night documenting everything I could remember. Every violation my father laughed about over dinner, every corner cut with a wink and handshake. You asked me at the gala what I contributed. The answer is nothing. I contributed nothing but damage. You, in 4 days, contributed more to this city than I did in 45 years. Build something better. Richard Beckham, I set the letter down and cried. Not for him. He had earned this fate. But for all the people who had suffered at the hands of men like him, whose crimes had been buried in footnotes, whose pain had been considered acceptable collateral damage. Angela arrived that evening with Chinese food and a bottle of champagne. To the woman who brought down an empire, she said, raising her glass. To doing the right thing, I countered. We clinked glasses, but the celebration felt hollow. What's wrong? Angela asked. You won, completely, devastatingly. I know. Then why do you look like someone died? I paused. Have you ever gotten exactly what you wanted, only to realize it wasn't what you needed? You needed justice. You got it. I got revenge. There's a difference. Angela studied me closely. Evelyn, he destroyed people for fun. He would have kept doing it if you hadn't stopped him. I know. And I'd do it again, but I struggled for words. When I had power over him, when I could have shown mercy, I didn't. I was just as cruel as he was, just with better justification. And you know it, don't you? I nodded. I had his entire future in my hands, and I crushed it. How is that different from what he did to me? Because you did it for justice. He did it for sport. We ate in silence for a while. Outside, the city lights flickered on, thousands of lives continuing despite the drama that had consumed mine. What are you going to do now? Angela asked. Finally, build my firm. Take on clients who actually care about the environment. Try to fix some of the damage. With all the attention you're getting, you could build an empire of your own. I thought of Richard's empire. Crumbling, federal agents seizing documents, employees clearing out desks. I don't want an empire. I just want to do good work, Angela smiled. That's why you're better than them. 6 months later, I returned to the same ballroom where Richard had humiliated me. The Beckham Hotel had been sold to cover legal fees and renamed something generic and forgettable. But the charity circuit continued, and somehow I had ended up back on the invitation list. This time I belonged there. My firm had grown to 12 employees. We'd exposed violations at 3 major corporations, forced cleanups at 7 sites, and saved an entire watershed from development. The mayor had given me a commendation. Forbes had profiled me. Evelyn Grant, Margaret Rothschild appeared at my elbow, radiant in emerald green. Margaret, you look well, dear. Success suits you. Thank you. I heard you turned down Hartman Industries. They offered quite a sum. They wanted me to approve a project I couldn't, so I walked away from $8 million. I walked away from becoming Richard Beckham. She smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. Good girl. The evening proceeded smoothly. People approached me with respect, even fear. The woman who had brought down Beckham, the one who couldn't be bought. I smiled, shook hands, played the game I had learned to play. Then I saw him, not Richard. His sentence would last years, but his son James, 23, was trying to salvage something from the family name. He stood alone by the bar, everyone giving him wide berth. Our eyes met across the room. I could have ignored him. I probably should have. I walked over. James flinched. Miss Grant, I didn't know you'd be here. It's a small city getting even smaller for my family. James tried to smile but failed. I wanted to thank you, he said quietly, for forcing my father to finally face the consequences. I raised an eyebrow. Do you know he's actually happy in prison? He says it's the first honest thing he's ever done, James continued, turning his glass in his hands. He writes to me about the books he's reading, the garden he's helping tend. He's more of a father now than he ever was in this world, I nodded. I'm glad. Are you? Or is that just what you're supposed to say? I considered the question. Both, I think. I'm trying to rebuild, he said quietly. Not the company, that's gone, but the foundation, the charitable work. My grandfather's original vision before it all got corrupted. He hesitated. Would you consider consulting for us? Pro bono, of course. I can't afford you otherwise. The request hung between us, the son asking for help from the woman who had destroyed his father. I heard myself say, "Send me your proposals. I'll review them." Relief washed over his face. Thank you. I won't waste your time. As he walked away, I realized something had shifted. The anger that had driven me for 6 months had finally begun to cool. In its place was something quieter, something sustainable. Purpose. 3 years later, the conference room was packed, standing room only. Environmental lawyers, activists, corporate representatives, all gathered for the annual summit on urban sustainability. At the podium, introducing the keynote speaker, was the mayor himself. 3 years ago, a young consultant exposed one of the largest environmental fraud cases in our city's history. Since then, she has revolutionized how we approach urban development, forcing accountability where there was none, demanding transparency where there were only shadows. Ladies and gentlemen, Evelyn Grant. I stood to applause and made my way to the podium. In the audience, I spotted familiar faces. Angela, now a full partner, beaming with pride. Margaret Rothschild, nodding approvingly. James Beckham, who had indeed rebuilt his grandfather's foundation into something meaningful. And in the back, barely visible, a figure in a suit that had seen better days. Richard Beckham, released early for good behavior, sitting quietly in the last row. Our eyes met for a brief moment. He nodded once, a small acknowledgement, an ending. I turned to face my audience. 3 years ago, a man called me uneducated. He was wrong about my education, but right about one thing. I didn't understand his world. I didn't understand how power insulated itself, how privilege protected its own, how systems were designed to exclude rather than include. I paused, letting the words settle. But I learned. And what I learned is this. The greatest education isn't in knowing how the system works. It's in knowing how to change it. The presentation went on for 45 minutes. I outlined the new standards we had developed, showed results from cleanup sites, and presented data demonstrating how environmental accountability had actually increased long-term property values. But what I remember most from that day was afterward. As people filed out, Richard approached, hesitant. "That was excellent," he said simply. "Thank you. I read your paper on regenerative urban development. It's brilliant." "I know," I replied. He almost smiled. Still honest. Always. We stood there, two people who had destroyed and rebuilt each other in different ways. "I never asked," he said that night at dinner. "If I had been civil, just kind. Would you have signed our proposal?" I thought about lying, letting him believe his cruelty had cost him everything. But I had built my new life on truth. "No," I said. The fraud was too extensive. I would have rejected it regardless. So my humiliating you was pointless. Most cruelty is. He absorbed that, then extended his hand. "I wish we had met differently, Miss Grant." I looked at his hand for a moment, then shook it. "We met the way we needed to meet, Mr. Beckham. You taught me that power without accountability is dangerous. I taught you that accountability comes for everyone eventually, even you. Especially me. The difference is, I'm not afraid of it." He walked away, out of the conference room, out of my life. I later heard he had started teaching at a community college. Business ethics, of all things. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. As for me, I returned to my office, not a corner office in a glass tower, but a converted warehouse where my 30-person firm worked to keep the city honest. On my desk sat a photo from that first gala, a reminder of where I had started. It no longer held pain, only perspective. That night, Richard Beckham had called me uneducated. He had been wrong about the word, but right about the lesson. Education isn't about degrees, pedigrees, or the right accent. It's about learning from every humiliation, every victory, every moment when you hold power over someone else and must decide what to do with it. I chose justice over mercy once. Given the chance again, I would make the same choice. But each time I hope to temper it, be a little kinder in my cruelty, a little more human in my power, because in the end, we're all trying to build something that matters in a world that constantly tries to tear us down. And sometimes, the greatest education is knowing when to build and when to burn. The champagne flute no longer trembles in my hand when I remember that morning in Richard's office. The memory has lost its sharp edges, smoothed over by time and perspective. He was right about one thing. Everything is a review. Every room, every conversation, every choice. But he was wrong about who was grading whom. In the end, we all submit our assessments, and eventually, we all face our own review. Mine continues tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that. Each decision a test. Each interaction a chance to prove that power doesn't have to corrupt, that strength doesn't require cruelty, and that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's becoming someone they could never have imagined you could be. That night, that glittering, horrible night when he called me uneducated, I learned the most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with the most power, it's the one with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. And sometimes, just sometimes, they're the same person. The city stretches out before my office window now, all glass, steel, and possibility. Somewhere out there, in conference rooms and ballrooms, people are still playing Richard Beckham's game, deciding who belongs, who matters, who deserves to be heard. But there's something they don't know. Something Richard learned too late. Every kingdom built on cruelty is just one signature away from collapse. And there is always someone watching, taking notes, waiting. Someone they dismissed. Someone they humiliated. Someone they underestimated. Someone like I was. Someone like you might be. The champagne has gone flat now, but I raise the glass anyway. A toast to every person who has ever been called less than, laughed out of a room, told they don't belong. Your day is coming. And when it does, when you hold their future in your hands as I held Richard's, remember this. Justice without mercy is just revenge, but mercy without justice is just enablement. Find the balance. Be better than they were, but not so much better that they never learn. Because in the end, the greatest education any of us can receive is understanding that our actions echo forward in ways we cannot predict, touching lives we'll never know, creating ripples that outlast our names. Richard Beckham taught me that, though he never meant to. And I taught him something too. Never underestimate the uneducated. We are the ones who must learn everything the hard way, which means we never forget the lessons.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.